Hey, I've got another update on the 350 back here. So I got a welder coming in, and I do have an arc, actually a good one. It's a Miller or Lincoln from the 70s or so. I actually don't remember which brand it is, because I'm pretty sure it's a Lincoln because it's blue and it's weird for the brand it is. I remember that. Anyway, I've had that thing since I was like 10 years old or something. And I've got a shitty flux core from Harbor Freight, and I've done some things with it, but I don't like flux core. It spatters, and you know, it's one of the cheapest ones you can get. So what I've got coming in now is a MIG welder. It's a Chinese brand. It's got good reviews. It's called Lotus, so it's like Lotus with a O instead of a U. It was on a sale to a point where I figured, why not? I'll try it out. It was literally half the cost of something else that I would buy from a comparable brand, or a comparable welder from a more reputable brand. And after seeing the welds that it's put down on video, and also just plenty of people saying it's good, I'm gonna go with it. So reason why I need that is because I want to make my own mounts for the transmission and the engine. If I don't do that, I'm going to be spending quite a bit of money on the mounts themselves anyway. So I figured, why not spend the money on a tool to do it myself, and then I have a tool when I'm done. And I like DIY anyway. So, and I can make sure it fits exactly how I want it. Because yeah, the kits, they make them for the transmission and the engine I want, but again, it's more for so I have the tool later. Also, I want to stitch weld this chassis. Now that's a lot of work because there are tack welds all over this thing. That's pretty normal for a modern car, or any car really. So I'm going to switch camera views and kind of show you what I'm thinking. Alright, so for starters, I don't want to overdo it on this video or in practice on what I'm doing, because I'm going to have to remove a lot of components to do this stitch welding. But I want to minimize how many components I move, so even if I get, you know, a quarter of the stitch welding that I could with a bare shell, it's still going to stiffen up the chassis. You could call it lazy, or I don't really care, because I want to plan on, or I'm planning on caging this eventually anyway, if not during the engine swap. So let's just go over what stitch welding is. If you see here, these two panels are connected. These little dots, these are tack welds from the factory, and the entire car is assembled this way. So they have a panel that's stamped, they put it together, and then they do these little tacks. It makes it quicker for them to assemble, but it also makes it safer in a collision, because the car will crumple. You can argue that though, because sometimes having a better shell is safer. It's just more of a, for a street car, you're not wearing a racing harness, you're not in a helmet with a neck brace, you don't have all the things that make a roll caged vehicle safe. Because you can probably look up anywhere on YouTube some drag racing rollovers or whatever, and these cars are going triple digit speeds and tumbling and tumbling and tumbling, and the driver might walk out. And same with NASCAR, or really any motorsport. So there's some reasons why that works, and it has to do with the way they're seated, the equipment they're wearing, how it's worn, and just the prep of the car itself. And I am more on the side of the stiffer the car, the better. Reason why it's nice for driving as well is it makes the chassis more predictable. You don't have that bend and sway. The whole body isn't acting like a spring. Some people can say it tears at things. Well, I'm willing to take that risk. So it's going to be a bit of a process, but it'll be fun, and it'll also improve my welding skills, because my MIG experience is extremely limited. I did a lot of arc when I was much younger, and I did a lot of flux core on my Cummins swap about 8 years ago. But you know, I'd like to learn MIG, and I'll of course do some practice pieces first. But this stitch welding project will definitely help out, and it will make things better, and it's also kind of fun, to be honest. So along here, this will all be bead. Now this is easy to get to. I just have to move some wires, do my weld, put it back, and I'm gonna have to go over all of these surfaces, and I'm going to have to wire wheel them down, flap wheel, whatever. Just get it down to bare metal for welding. Along here on this frame horn, see these two pieces? I'm going to weld that together, making this a stronger structure. I am debating that, though. I might leave the frame horns as they are. We'll see. Along here, another place for welding. Along here. Along here. In here, there is more areas where panels go together. Up on the firewall. See all this? There's a tack, there's another tack, there's another tack, and so on and so forth. This whole panel can be welded up. And all of this adds up to actually quite a lot of stiffening. I did just bump my head on the hood. Almost said sorry about that to you. I'm the one that got hurt. Whatever. Also, if you look at this trim, so right here, more panels that are just kind of chilling next to each other. They're not really held together in any major way, but as you go along and weld these up, it's adding up to a stiffer and stiffer chassis. Here as well, on this factory cross brace, this has 1, 2, 3, 4 tacks on it. I can make this entire thing a bead. This actually has some bead on it, which is interesting, but it's not complete. I would like to fill that hole. Now, of course, there is some people who say you want to bead on everything. Some people say you want to have like an inch or a 30 millimeter gap between them, and you know, that's pretty reasonable. I'm more on the side of doing the stitches rather than filling up the hole completely. So I may not touch these parts, but these I definitely will, where they're only tacked. And here as well, and up here, all these, they're kind of odd. These are like, they're not like circle tacks, they're kind of pulled along. All of this is going to be filled in, or at least I'll fill this one in, then fill this one in, then fill this one in, etc. Let's see, where else is a good spot to show that? Down here, there's more of it. Panels that can be welded up. Now, all this crap is it kind of sucks to deal with, but I'll probably leave this alone since it is just a pan. It's probably one piece anyway. I can do the dry ice thing. Oh, maybe it isn't one piece. I'm not sure. Maybe those of you who are more familiar with the 350s can tell me. And also, if you know of any places where there is significant areas where you can stitch it, let me know. So down here, real common one. See along here, there's a nice place where you can add some stiffening. It's just tacks here. Same across this entire seam. It's just two panels squished together with a tack every once in a while. Now if I stitch that up, again, that adds to the stiffness of the chassis. So all these seals are going to have to come out, the carpet, the seat, because I don't want to burn it, especially when I go up here. I'm just going to sit on the floorboard here. Up here, I can weld these in as well. Now there's quite a bit of gap here. I may just hammer this or leave it alone, not sure. But along here, definitely. And up here, definitely can stitch that up. Same with down here, stitch that up. See, it's just the little tacks all along. So it's a lot of welding, and if I were to pay someone else to do this, it would cost thousands of dollars just because of the man hours of doing it. But I don't mind being a slave to myself when it's going to be pretty cool to have it done. So along here as well, it's odd. I don't know why Nissan did this, but they have their tacks, but they're also using bolts for these panels. I'm guessing what they did was bolt the panels together and then a machine came in and did the tacks. But I see that kind of everywhere on this car. More bolts, but it's also welded. So these bolts aren't necessarily, like, this piece isn't meant to be removed. It is actually tack welded in, even though it has bolts. Maybe it's holding something on the other side. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling it has to do with assembly. Up here in these windows, more of that. Tack along here, but these are actually two separate pieces. Along here, just everywhere. So I'm gonna have to go mad with a wire wheel, a flapper disc, anything I can get all along here. If any of this is stiffened, if I roll this car or anything, I'm gonna have a much better chance of this roof not squishing and me living. So I can do it all along here as well. I may or may not, but we'll see. But definitely along these pinch parts, or these where two pieces meet. This is another sandwich piece. There's this part, and then there's another part up here. That seam needs to be welded up. Now, I'm probably not going to run headliner in this car. Maybe some Dynamat to quiet it down, but I really would like to lighten it up. So I'm not trying to run a full interior anyway, and I didn't get one, and I'm just going to save money by not buying one. So anywhere that I can find a reasonable place to do a stitch weld, I will. All along here, it's all tacked. This is all two pieces, this piece and this piece. And just stitch all along here. So much welding to do, but I'm looking forward to it. And up in here as well, especially if I just do it a little bit at a time after work. Maybe film a bit for you, time lapse. Sorry, I just ate. I just burped. Under here, there's probably some. And in some places you're going to run into like sealant and shit. Oh, sorry, I cussed. Trying to reduce that for YouTube. I am a bit of a sailor mouth. Alright, so as you can see, I have a lot of welding to do. Many hours are going to be put into this, but I think it's going to be worth it. People have actually done tests on stitch welding a car, full chassis while it's a shell, and sometimes you can get between 20 and 40% addition in stiffness over the base. And as someone who likes a good apex, likes carving corners and all that, I'm not much of a drag racer. I'm more the type to go to an autocross or a nice canyon. It's going to help out. So, and it's cheap. It is super cheap. I just gotta pay a bit of wire, pay a bit of gas, Margon or whatever, and a bit of electricity, and the benefits are worth it, in my opinion. Others might say, well, that's stupid. You're just gonna thrash the shell anyway and all that. I would like this car to last, especially because my plans keep leading more and more towards rally. I would actually like to lift this car. And maybe even eventually get some travel out of the suspension. But I found out that the G35 sedan suspension, the stock stuff, will actually lift the 350 by an inch. And it's on some cheap coilovers right now, which I cannot stand. I would rather have stock. So I'm going to be swapping those out for the G35 suspension and selling my coilovers. Hopefully I break about even. I found out that I can get all the stuff from Rock Auto for about $200. So that's not bad for all four corners. And yeah, so I also found spacers on eBay that add 40 millimeters and 30 millimeters. I can't remember which is which. I think it's 40 in the front and 30 in the rear, which will work out perfect, especially if I'm using the G35 suspension, because the V8 is going to be a little heavier in the front, especially if I get an iron block. So, which is most likely. I'm not going to go crazy and try and find an aluminum block 6.0. I would rather have the 6-liter in iron than an aluminum in whatever other cubic inch, because I have plans for that 6-liter. I would like to go to a 4.8 crank, make it a higher rever. That can take a lot of compression because you're not going to have as much piston angle movement. It's going to stay straighter in its travel, and you can push it just a little harder. So it's not going to be boosted at first. My goal is to kind of iterate on this car. But if I start with the 6-liter, I'm already a step up. Plus, in stock trim, stock NA trim, I'm making good power off a 6-liter. So that's my hunt there. Anyway, thanks for checking it out. Thanks for viewing me ramble about welding, and I guess you'll see me scratch all that paint off. All that pretty black cherry paint, or maroon, or whatever they call it. Whatever.